Do you know that deep learning is a broader classification of machine learning? Deep learning is a library that has made so many things possible, things that 10 years ago we would have never even thought of. Are you interested in learning about this and neural networks and so much more? Then this video might be just the one for you. Welcome to OdinSchool. We bring to you a complete free tutorial on deep learning with TensorFlow. Whether you've always dreamed of being a deep learning engineer or you just want to learn advanced machine learning skill set, this free tutorial is all you will need. In this free tutorial, we will be taking you through the uses and applications of deep learning, the different types of neural networks, and a lot of hands-on activities. Don't forget, after this video, you will be able to understand completely the use of deep learning, and not just that, you will also be able to work on projects like deep learning with TensorFlow, like NLP, and various others. Thank you for watching this video, and please click on the link below to watch the full free tutorial on deep learning with TensorFlow.
Hey all, welcome to another session with me, Varun, on OdinSchool. And in this session, we would be looking at what is deep learning, the importance of deep learning, and also we would be taking a look at what is TensorFlow on the Python platform, that is using the Anaconda Navigator. And I would also want you all to get introduced and to understand this language, that is, why do we use TensorFlow, and also if TensorFlow is a language or if it is a library, what would learning this language give us with, right? Now, to give you a small introduction about OdinSchool, this is a school of technology which is basically an upskilling platform, and we would help you to continuously acquire new skills. And giving you a small introduction about myself, my name is Varun, and I have a total experience of 7 years wherein I've been working as a developer and a trainer as well. And over these years, I have been working on different languages and platforms like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, R language, Python, machine learning, deep learning, etc. Now, the agenda of this session would be very brief here. We would be looking at some very important concepts the first part, or to tell you, we would be looking at some very important concepts about the introduction of TensorFlow. So we would be beginning with an understanding of the relationship between deep learning and TensorFlow. Now, this is very important, because in most of the cases, a lot of people have a query, that is, if deep learning and TensorFlow, are they two different languages, or if one is a language and another is a library, and where do we use the library, which of these is a language and which of these is a library. So let us understand that in the first place. Then we would be going on to the next part, that is understanding the platforms, the different platforms that we have in the deep learning arena, or in the deep learning sphere. We would be taking a look at the different platforms that we have, after which we would be moving on to the basic of TensorFlow. Okay, now when we talk about the basic of TensorFlow, here we would be doing a hands-on session. We would be working on a small model. We would be working on I wouldn't even call a model, I would say we would be working on some basics of coding, and we would be looking at how to use this library TensorFlow. Right, guys? So without wasting time, let us quickly move and let us understand how this language can actually affect us and what this language is all about. Now, to give you an understanding, as you can see, TensorFlow, when you move on to Python, you would be seeing that you would be using it as .tf, which is .tensorflow. Now, TensorFlow allows a developer basically to create large scale neural networks. Very important word, guys, large scale neural networks. We would be talking about what is neural networks and the scope of neural networks as we go ahead. But then this is how we would be beginning with. It is basically to create large scale neural networks with many layers. And TensorFlow is used for classification, perception, understanding, discovery, prediction, and creation. Now let us just skip the definition that I have for you here, and let us quickly move on to understanding the definition that we have on Google. So here you can see I would be now taking you to a small definition that we would be seeing in Google. This is a standard website that is by TensorFlow, as you can see. This is tensorflow.org. Let me just use the marker so that I could just mark things for you. Here, if you can see, we have tensorflow.org. This is the website. Now here in this website, we would be talking why do we have to use TensorFlow, and if its usage would actually make anything easy for us, or if it's all just a thought. Okay, now firstly, it can be used to build models easily. The first one is you build and train ML models, that is machine learning models, easily using intuitive high level APIs, that is Keras. Now Keras is also another API that we have built within Anaconda Navigator. Okay, and it also has got eager execution, as you can see here, and it makes immediate model iteration and easy debugging. So this is the first point. Now the second point is it is pretty robust. Okay, now you can train and deploy these models anywhere. Now it could be on cloud, or it could be on your device, or it could be on any platform. It's not very difficult for us to create these and launch these. The third one is it is a very powerful experimentation tool or a language for research. It is a simple and a flexible architecture which makes it very easy and also very powerful to be used, and also to use either by a developer or by a consultant, or by whatever. So these three features basically bring the game changing difference in other languages versus TensorFlow. Now how is this arranged? How do we work on TensorFlow? Now if you could just take a look at this beautiful website, that is tensorflow.org, you would see that we have a lot of arenas on which we could actually use TensorFlow for. Now why do we need this, or what is TensorFlow? If you can see, it is the core, the core open source library to help you develop and train machine learning models. All right, now here you could also go ahead and explore different options. What would happen if you get started working on TensorFlow and all this? Okay, now we don't need this as of now. Let's get back to understanding what all it could achieve for us. So there are different problems, like you can have neural machine translation. This is the MNIST dataset, when you have a lot of images of shirts, slippers, jeans, and different clothes that we wear. And here you have different numbers that are populated. Now we would be able to use TensorFlow as a library to check those. Now here also it is used by doctors to detect respiratory diseases. It can be used by Airbnb to show a list of photos, and by medical staff to come up with the right antibiotics for people. And also on this website you would be having a lot of other things which we might require once you start understanding, and once you start working on this beautiful library. Now going forward, as we have understood, it's mainly used for classification, perception, understanding, discovery, prediction, and creation. Being a part of deep learning libraries, or being the mostly used deep learning library, I would say TensorFlow has changed the game for a lot of developers and for a lot of people. Now, when we were talking about neural networks, that is in the slide above, we were talking about this fact, that is, it allows developers to create large scale neural networks. Let us now go ahead and understand what do we mean by these neural networks. Now, as you can see here, we have it right in front of us. A neural network is a highly structured layer, or it is a highly structured network, and it comes in layers. Now if you can just follow, if this is your input, we have a couple of layers here, okay, and then you have your output. So this would be your output, the first part would be your input, and all these three are called the layers. Now these layers are completely interconnected. Now let us assume that you have 1 2 3 here, okay. Now here you would be having different nodes, okay. Now it would connect to each of these and then they would in turn get connected to something else. Now this is the same. Alright guys, so this is what makes it a complex network. Alright, and what are we trying to achieve here? We are trying to achieve output wherein this the process of iteration, or the process of checking between the hidden layers, is almost as complex or is almost at par with human brain. This is what you could say as of now. Alright, now if this is your input, it would then go through all the hidden layers and you would be having an output here. Right guys, now if you can see, that's exactly what we've tried to explain here. An input is passed to the first hidden layer, that is, and what is our first hidden layer? If you can see, this would be my first hidden layer, this is my second, and this is my third. Right guys, so this is how we would be having our hidden layer. So this is H1. Oops, I think I just increased the size. Right, so we have H1, H2, which is this, and then we have H3. So you have three hidden layers, hidden 1, hidden 2 and hidden 3. Now each of these is basically to ensure that the classification's performance is improved. Now let us just go ahead and understand the next part of it. This is an actual understanding of the structure. So here, let me just explain this to you. If you can see, I have my input. This is the first layer. This is the hidden layer wherein I would be having all my logical transactions happening here, and then this would be my output. Alright, so now that is how we would be working on them, and all the calculations or all the complexity would get completed in the hidden layers. So hidden layers basically ensures that a lot of complexity can be crunched. And why do we need this? This is required for an improved performance. Now what would improved performance give us, guys? When we talk about performance getting improved, we can say that it would the code would get executed faster, the accuracy would be higher, and we can see that the code is less complex. So you have things like these which actually bring about a difference in the way how normal languages and how this language is or are specifically coded or developed is also what you can say. Now these are the three layers that we were always talking about, or I was referring to right from the beginning. The input, hidden and the output. We've already seen what these three layers are and what they would do for us. So now let us go on to understanding the next part of it. That is some very important and famous tools that people can work on deep learning, and that people can use this as a platform to come up with different codes or different programs for different purposes. Now we could think of applications that are built off the tools provided by iOS, which is the Apple, or Android, which is another mobile operating software. Now we have some very famous platforms and libraries, right? Out of which the first one you have is H2O.ai. right? Now H2O.ai is also a tool, like any of these, all right, and it is also an open source machine learning and artificial intelligence platform. Okay, let me also just make that as a written mark here, so that you could make a note of them when you appear for your interviews probably. So here I have my H2O, which this is also for ML plus AI. And just to make a note, this is open source. You do not have to pay anything when you want to work on H2O.ai. The next one that we have in order is Datto Graph Lab. Now, when you talk about Datto Graph Lab, this is also another tool for us to work on deep learning. It is graph based, moreover, as you can see, the name suggests the same, all right, and it is moreover written in C++, which is the language. This was started way back in 2009. I think it's almost a decade that it's come up, and this is also an open source project which uses Apache license. The third one that we have is Caffe, alright, that is CAFFE, alright, which is also a tool. Then the next one we have is Theano. Theano, I'm sure you all know, you must have heard about it. Theano, guys, if you do not know about it, please pause the video, and I think it's time you check about it. Theano is also a Python library. Now this is not a tool, Theano is a library. That's the reason why I've written some platforms and library. Now this is a library and the earlier were platforms. Now talking about Theano, which is a library, it is mostly for optimizing and for manipulating and evaluating mathematical expressions, the ones which are mostly related to matrices, and also Theano's computations are expressed in NumPy. So you have great uses of this, all right. And if anyone could ask you what is Theano used for, you could say that Theano is great when you would want to work on mathematical calculations. And yeah, so Theano is another library that you have for deep learning. And now we all know TensorFlow. TensorFlow is also another library. But then both of these libraries, when they both work for, or when they both work towards data science, they do not go without a difference. Theano performs tasks far faster than TensorFlow, especially the single GPU tasks, right? They are very fast in Theano. When we talk about TensorFlow or TF, it is a bit slow in terms of execution speed, but in multi GPU tasks, it takes the lead. So this is how they both differ. Now, just to get our hands dirty, what we'll do is let us quickly move on to the Anaconda platform, and let us just download the library. Let us just warm ourselves up with the usage of TensorFlow using Anaconda Navigator. So guys, this is my TensorFlow. Okay, now for all those of you who might want to install TensorFlow for the first time, you could get into the Anaconda Navigator, and within Anaconda Navigator you can get into the base root, or you can install or you can create a new session here, a new environment here with the name TensorFlow, and then in either of them you could just click on them. All right, whatever it is, you could click on one of them, whichever is these you want to execute, or whichever is these you want to work right now, and then you can just check here for all what are installed and not installed. Now here I would be going back, and now I'm just checking all what are installed and not installed, and if TensorFlow is not installed, then you could come here and check for it, right guys? So now that this is done, I will now move on to my Jupyter notebook, wherein I have my TensorFlow basics. The name can also be changed. You can change this to TensorFlow I'll probably name this as part 1. So yeah, all these kind of basic changes can be done. Now what I'm doing is I'm importing TensorFlow library, which is a part of Anaconda Navigator. I would now inform or rather activate it or rather import it for usage in my own code or for my own code. Now that I've imported TensorFlow, the next step I would be doing is I would just want to check or play around with certain words or certain keywords. And here, the first of these that I would want you people to get introduced is tf.constant. Right now, tf.constant creates a constant tensor for a tensor like object. Okay, now you can also say that it is useful for asserting a value that can be put into it. And also, if the type is not specified, then it would be inferred automatically when you check your output. Now what I am talking may be confusing right now, so without wasting time and without pondering, let us quickly move on to understand what it is. So let me just quickly change this to pencil. Alright. Right, so here you can see I have my 4 lines, out of which the first one is it says I am Varun. Okay, it says as in I typed this, guys. So alright, now here tf constant would be taking in this word, that is I am Varun, and I would now want to print and pass this into a value 1. So what I'm doing is, just because I've taken a couple of alphabets, I don't mean to say that this is full and final. I've also taken a whole number, I've taken a decimal, and I've taken a boolean value of true and false as well. Now what I would be doing is I would be executing this, that is print of value 1. And when I do this, you can see that it has created a tensor, alright, which is a constant, and the type is a string. Right, guys, I hope you understood. If you've not, please put the video on pause, and you could just write them down to understand them better. Now, just because I've printed a value does not mean I would not be able to print other values. We could do that, and in order to do that, I'll just add a comma to my value 1 or after my value 1. So I have my value 1, comma value 2, comma value 3, wherein value 1 is a string. As you can cross verify, it's a string. My value 2, which is the second one, you can see it's a full number, that is why it is int 32. And then I have my third one. You can see we have given a value of 2.14, which is float. So I have a value of float here. Okay, let me just show it to you. So if you can see, this is my float 32. So the beautiful part here is TensorFlow has become very easy of late. And with introduction of TensorFlow 2.0, which we will be looking at in the upcoming session of the basics of TensorFlow, you would see how even TensorFlow 1 or the actual TensorFlow that we are working on right now is also a bit more complex, wherein I'm trying to say that the second part is much easier as compared to the first part, or the second development or the second release, that is the TensorFlow 2.0, is much easier in terms of coding as well as compared to the current TensorFlow. Right? Now that we have an understanding of all these values, I would now want to create a session, that is tf.session. And when I create this, I would be assigning it a variable name Alright, and that variable name would be here, as you can see, it is SES1. Now, what would a session do for me? It as in the session, tf.session, it would initiate a graph object in which tensors are produced through operations. Now you can say the with block terminates the session as soon as the operations are completed. Hence, if someone asks you what is the actual need of creating a session, well, we could very confidently say that there is no specific use of creating a session, but sessions, because they contain variables, global variables, placeholders, and operations, it becomes important, right? So this is where, or this is why we would have to use a session. Now that I have created a session SES1 and I've taken the value or the syntax to be tf.session, I would now do SES1.run, but I would want to run value 2 and value 3, which is here you can see we have value 2 and value 3. Yeah, so from here to here I have my value 2 and then its value 3. Alright, so guys, I hope this is being understood. Now we are just going to the next step, wherein we are trying to understand how to combine text. As you can see here, I am again creating a new session. Now we all know what we use a session for. This is no secret now. It's very easy, as you can see, as you can observe. It's all about understanding things for the first time. And once you know them, the second most important part is being able to consistently work on them. But otherwise, I would at least personally not call, or I would not, qualify TensorFlow to be a very, very difficult language for a developer. It is definitely, a bit complex than generic Python, but still pretty much doable if you have a basic understanding or a good understanding of Python. Now, going forward, I've created another session, that is SESS is equal to tf.session. Now, I'm creating two strings, that is with the name string1 and string 2. Now on both of these, string 1 and string 2, I have taken a constant, but if you can see, the constant here is not a number, it's a couple of text. So I have hey you there. Okay, what I'm doing is, now I've taken session, I'm using run, and I'm trying to add both my strings, that is string 1 with string 2, and here you can see you have hey you there, which is a combination of 1, 2 and 3. So here, that is the reason why we are having a clubbed output. Now we shall proceed to the next step, that is, now when we were all the while taking a constant, we just took tf.constant followed by some random alphabets or followed by a word or followed by a random number. But now what we would be doing is, I'm taking the same library, that is tf, and I'm again taking constant. Now I would be taking a number 3 and I would give the d type, as d type is the data type. I would give the data type to be tf.float32. That's because I'm able to see my values for A and B have been taken at random. Right. Now going to the next one, that is B, I've taken tf.constant with number 4, and the data type is float 32, right? But then now I'm giving it a function. This is a value. This part is a value given. This part is the logic being fed onto the system, or you could say this part is the developer, or this part is me giving my system a logic that is to be performed. The same is here, and so is it here. Now if we can just take a small look at this, wherein I am taking A is equal to TF constant with a value of 3 and B with a value of 4, and when I do my add of A plus B, okay, you should be able to see values now. So here let us just come up with values so that we could check. Cool. So you can see when I do session.run of addition, I have a value of 7.0. So this is exactly how basic print execution or basic print command differs with a print when you are running it within a session, or else it is just as good as not understood to you or by any person who would be working on your code at a later point of time. Right, so now I'm taking session which we've created, I'm using run and I'm using add. Likewise, I'm doing it for multiplication and the second multiplication as well. Quickly going forward, notwithstanding these kind of simple operations like drag and probably come up with addition, multiplication, subtraction using TensorFlow, just to understand how it works, we can actually work on some very basic operations, and notwithstanding this, we could also work on extremely complex calculations or extremely complex algorithms. Hence, it goes without saying that do not decide a language while we are still trying to understand it, right? Sometimes it turns out to be much easier than what we've thought. So now talking about the basic operations, here I have addition wherein I'm taking a constant, a TensorFlow constant with a value of 5 and a TensorFlow constant with a value of 3. And guys, I'm sure you all know that in Python you could actually give a plus symbol for the values to get populated, right? So here as you can see, I'm taking TF constant and with a value of 5, and this is a value of 3. So 5 plus 3 is 8. The second one that we're doing is a multiplication wherein I am taking the constant to be 5 and the other constant also to be 5. So I have an output of 25. And we all know what session.run does, at least now that we've seen and that we've understood. I don't think session.run needs any further explanation or a repeated understanding of the same thing. Now, as we have seen, if you could come up with a value for only one integer within a constant, this can be done for n number of integers within a constant. So here you can see I am taking a constant of 5 and 6 and then another constant of 3 and 4. Likewise, I am also taking another constant that's 5, 2 and another constant that's 5, 3. Here I would now be running a session of addition and multiplication. And here we go, we have the values right in front of us. Right, guys? Now, all the while we were doing any of this, if you have any query, the first thing I would request you to do is please pause the video immediately and feel free to comment about it in the section below. That is the comment section below. Right, now let us again go back to where we started. So we just saw we just saw what TensorFlow is and how it works. So we have now an understanding about some very famous libraries that are required for us. All right, we now have an understanding of what deep learning is. We have checked some platforms, that is H2O, Datograph Lab, and etc. And the next part would be before we move on, just to give you an understanding, the next part would be TensorFlow 2.0. Let me also write it down here. There is a bit of difference between TensorFlow, which we have seen right now, versus TensorFlow 2.0, and not very far from now we would be taking a look at TensorFlow 2.0, what it is, how did coding ethics change after TensorFlow 2.0 has kicked in, and what are the prime differences between TensorFlow and TensorFlow 2.0. Now, I hope you have understood, as far as this session is concerned, the relationship between deep learning and TensorFlow. So guys, deep learning is a language, is a concept, is what you can say. Deep learning is neither a language, deep learning is neither a framework, deep learning is neither a tool. Guys, deep learning is a concept. Deep learning is a subject that we are trying to work on using the library TensorFlow. Again, just to remind all of you, TensorFlow is not, I'm just marking it across here so that you remember this vividly. TensorFlow is not a language. TensorFlow is a library that can be imported within Anaconda Navigator or within Python. That's the most underlining line that you all should be knowing. The second one is platforms used for deep learning. I hope you all remember the different platforms we were just talking about in the slide above. So platforms is also done, and finally the libraries and basics of TensorFlow library. Now, talking about the different libraries that we have within TensorFlow, I would actually recommend that you just go through the internet, at least check each of them, so that you have an understanding about what is what. So you have TensorFlow, you have Keras, and we have just in this video come across another library which we use in development of deep learning, right? So all these libraries, all these basics, all these platforms, all these complex jargons, they all come together to come up with something really brilliant, and that is, the best example that I could give you right away is a driverless car. We all know how a driverless car works, right? Now, deep learning can be understood, or you could say that driverless car has concepts that are directly borrowed from deep learning, right, guys? So I really hope that you have enjoyed watching the video, and also I hope that this video has been of some use to you, and if it has, then guys, please do not forget to hit the like button that you have right below the video. There is also a subscribe button. Do not forget the bell icon for regular updates. And also, if you feel that this video might help your friend, or that it might help your colleague, or that it might help your near one in getting an understanding about what is deep learning and how it would impact us and what all we could do and if it is suitable for you or not, then I would recommend or I would request you to share the video as well. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. This is me, Varun, your mentor, your trainer, signing off. All the very best for the exam or for the interview or for the job role that you're about to take up.